It's Italian American Week, and I am pleased to have on Al Primo, a legend in television news. So thank you so much for sharing the table with me.
My pleasure to be here.
We have a lot to get through, a lot of television news history. Let's start with how you got into television news to begin with. You started out as a young lad. When?
Well, right at high school, the day I graduated, I started looking for a job.
This is Pittsburgh, correct?
In Pittsburgh,
Okay.
Pennsylvania. And as you know, Pittsburgh is part of the Golden Triangle, where the Allegheny and the Monongahela meet to form the mighty Ohio River. And I went to every office building from the point of Pittsburgh to the end for about 4 weeks straight,
You were
every single day.
persistent.
Went to every building, and on the last day in the last building, the Chamber of Commerce building, get in the elevator. By now, I could look at the menu board to see the names of the company. Copper's Company, 10th floor. I went up, pressed number 10, got off, made a left-hand turn, went into the reception room and said, "Hi, my name's Al Primo. I'd like to apply for a job here." He said, "Oh, well, fine, sit down right here." And as I'm sitting in the lobby, there's a lot of craziness going around. And you have music, and I think, God, this is odd. And they bring me into the personnel director's office, and on the top it said, the Dumont Television Network. I made the wrong turn.
Oh.
So I filled out the application out of embarrassment because I didn't want to say I'm in the wrong place.
So a wrong turn led
Right.
to an entire career in television.
Exactly. They hired me the next day in the mailroom.
What happened then?
Well, I went to work in the mailroom, and I just fell in love with this business and this industry, and it was, you know, the message from above was, this is where you're going to be, and I said, I don't really even have to go to college. I love it. And some very smart executive there said, you know, if you're really going to amount to anything, you need to go to the university. So I applied at the university. Luckily got in, and the personnel director, the same personnel director, said, well, you know, we don't have any programs here, so you'll have to leave. And my heart was broken. He said, but you've been such a great employee, we'll put you on the night shift if you'd like to do that. And I did. So I went to school full-time in the day and worked full-time at night,
All right,
2 to 11.
that lays the foundation for which was your entire life in television news. It's Italian American Week, so I want to put up a first picture just to lay the groundwork for your Italian background. Who is this, Al?
This is my Aunt Pat, and this picture was taken in San Antonio, Texas, where I was undergoing basic training for the Pennsylvania Air National Guard at the U.S. Air Force training camp. And you know, this is an intensive 11-week course in which you don't leave the grounds. Somehow, my uncle, her husband, came to that base and got me out of there for 2 days. I don't know what he said. All I know is they came to the barracks and said, report to the front office, and I did. And there was my uncle and his wife saying, come on, Junior, get in the car.
So you had a little reprieve.
2 days. It was like dying and going to heaven after the intensive marches and, you know, drill instructors and all of that.
What part of Italy are your relatives from?
They're from the Calabria region.
Okay, we've established that now. Now this, to me, this next picture is romantic to me. This is a test pattern, which we don't see on television anymore.
Right.
This is KDKA Pittsburgh. And I had a professor at Purdue University who also was at KDKA Pittsburgh, and he said, you know what, if you're gonna make it in the business, kid, get to KDKA. So this is very romantic to me. Talk about this test pattern.
Well, this test pattern is WDTV. At that point, it was called the Dumont Television Network. It was Channel 3 in Pittsburgh. Dumont was a network. There was only ABC, there was CBS, NBC, and Dumont. ABC hadn't even been invented then.
Think about that.
Yeah. And they had about they had a station in Baltimore, they had a station in New York, and they had a station in Pittsburgh, and one in Los Angeles. And this was the beginning of when they had Sid Caesar and all these wonderful people.
What year are we talking about here, Al?
1953, 54.
All right.
That's when I started. And they had a network newscast called Morgan Beatty and the News, and he'd come on like Walter Cronkite used to come on, and he'd say, you know, there'd been a plane crash in Kansas City, Missouri. For that story, we switched to Pittsburgh and Bill Burns, who was the anchorman news director, and he'd get up and read the story, no video at all, and that was a network cut-in.
Television in its infancy. All right, I want to go to the next picture. Tell me.
Well, this guy is Bill Burns, and he's the guy that really got me into the newsroom from the mailroom. He really taught me almost everything I know about this business. And the emphasis was on people. You know, he said, people are interested in other people. Don't ever lose sight of when you're covering a story to cover the people angle. He really drilled that into me. And it's been my mantra from every station I've ever been, and the keystone of the Eyewitness news format that I created.
Which you developed.
This is Bill and I when I was, you know, dying to get on the air, and I did get on the air briefly for a 5-minute newscast on Sundays. And it occurred to me that, you know, there was something beyond, you know, just being an anchor, that how to make it happen and how to manage an industry. And that's the direction I took. And for 12 years, working every job at KDKA, I only got to assistant news director. They wouldn't make me news director because the manager said, they still think of you as the mail boy.
Oh boy. Well, you got pretty far there.
Well, then one day I got a call from the Westinghouse Broadcasting Company people who were in for a corporate visit about, we're going to get a station in Philadelphia, and you know Pennsylvania, and we'd like you to be the news director.
So that was the end.
That was in.
All right, next picture.
Well, this is Elmer Lauer, Al Primo, and Larry Grossman. Elmer was the president of ABC News, and Larry Grossman was the president of NBC News. And Al Primo was just arriving at WABC, creating this format called Eyewitness News, which these two guys couldn't get and understand.
So they couldn't get their head around it.
They couldn't get their head around it, and I'm there trying to explain it. And
so where did this idea come from? Let's talk about Eyewitness News that you created. What was it, and what did it grow into be?
Well, I was at KDKA for 12 years, doing every job, watching what worked and what didn't work. And then when they finally made me news director at KYW, all these things came together in a most marvelous, divine way, frankly. I looked at the contract at KYW, and the contract had a clause that said, any member of AFTRA can write, report, and appear on the air with his own story. And the reason that there were never any reporters on the air in television in 1965 was because they had to be paid a talent fee.
Sure.
And companies were, you know, not interested in, you know, watching the budget, and, you know, they had an anchorman, a weatherman, and a sportsman. That covered everything. These reporters and so forth and writers would give the anchor people the stories to read. And when I saw this clause, I said, wait a minute, I can put these people on the air. I interviewed all of them in the newsroom and found out what they were interested in and what their expertise was in. And we really created television's first beat system. So this guy was going to be City Hall, and this guy was going to be science, and this guy was going to be education, and this girl was going to be transportation. And
so it weaved a tapestry and a fuller picture of your market.
Well, as I say, when I got there was an anchorman, a weatherman, and a sportsman. So we created this beat system, and we start sending these people out just like newspapers and journalism organizations have done for years. And the next thing you know, they're bringing back original stories, you know, that no one else had.
Right.
And it was content that the audience saw. And then when you have a reporter sitting on a set next to the anchor person, it elevates the story and it elevates his importance. And the anchor people were a little upset in the beginning. Well, they were a lot upset in the beginning.
Some egos got in the way?
Well, they said, you know, I don't want to be a news jockey, you know, introducing people. I said, no, it's not that. A, you're going to be seen in a different way. You know, you're the commander-in-chief of the newscast. You're going to be interviewing these people. They're going to see a side of you that they don't see when you're just straight ahead reading in, and you're going to debrief them briefly. And that seemed to soothe the egos, and then they started getting reaction from the audience that, hey, you know, I like that one guy, and you did a great job with that person. And it was then that I had the vision to make sure that television was all male, only men. And I thought,
what's up with that?
yeah. And Philadelphia had a wonderful woman by the name of Marcia Rose.
And is this who we're talking about right here?
This is Marcia Rose.
And Tom Snyder sitting next to her.
And Tom Snyder, who had hired, as my first anchorman that I ever hired was Tom Snyder, and brought him to Philadelphia. And Marcia Rose was just kind of in the public affairs department, you know, doing...
What was it about her that you thought could be behind the desk and be an anchor woman?
Well, you know, she had great community contacts. You know, she was very attractive, she was very well-spoken, she could communicate, and she had enough of an ego that she could work with a Tom Snyder and not be devoured by Tom Snyder.
Are we saying he had quite the ego?
He did have quite the ego.
You know,
so we put her on as really the first, well, not the first, but one of the first women anchors in America.
And how long did she last?
She's still there.
Oh, that's music to my ears. That's awesome. All right, let's go to the next picture. There's a whole bunch of folks here.
Well, when we did Eyewitness News in Philadelphia, you know, Philadelphia is a great tryout market.
Sure,
that's why the
test
Broadway,
market.
Broadway shows go there, because nobody cares.
Well, they do, but you know.
Well, so nobody really noticed about Eyewitness News. It was, you know, different. We did good ratings, but nobody made a fuss. Except I got a call one day from ABC, and they asked me to come up and look at their news program, and it was in a shambles, and I said that to them, and that it needed a lot of work, and they said, well, look, you know, whatever it takes, we're willing to do. You can hire anybody you like, and there are no sacred cows, and just get us responsibly looking.
How wonderful is that? A fresh palette to do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So I said, well, look, there can't be any sacred cows. I've got to be able to, and they said, okay. So I went, and this time I had a little budget and more help and a bigger organization to run.
And some of this crew started to come together.
Right. So we went out and started hiring. As I look at this picture, you know, a lot of these people were weekend anchors, very well trained on the air, good reporters, good journalists, and they brought a level to New York that had not been seen.
Let's talk about Roger Grimsby, who people remember.
Roger was the perfect anchor. When I came, Roger said, I know what you're here for. You're here to fire me. And I said, no, I'm not here to.
He sounds insecure to me.
Yeah, I said, no, I'm not here to fire you. I'm here to try to, you know, make this thing run. And he was pretty hard to take all by himself, and it was kind of a turnoff because people saw him as rather cold and not caring and gruff. So I decided to put an anchor person with him, a co-anchor, and Don Dunphy, who was the assistant, not the assistant news director, just an assistant, said, you know, Bill Butel used to be the anchor man here, but he failed. And I said, where is he now? He said, well, he's in London. He went to ABC News London. So I called him up and said, could you come, you know, take a 2-week vacation. We'll pay for you to come to New York, and I'd like for you to sit with Roger Grimsby and do the news. And he said, oh, I'd love to do that, you know, Bill. And so we put the two of them together, and it was like...
You created some magic.
Lerner and Lowe, or, you know...
Hepburn and Tracy.
Yeah, it was just, they meshed, they picked up on each other's lines. Roger had respect for Bill, being a London correspondent. Bill was smart enough to know that Roger was the seasoned veteran and had some wit to him. And that acerbic wit hit the New York market like a sledgehammer. You know, it was just captured the imagination of this toughest audience in the world. they loved it. And all of a sudden, this ragtag third, fourth, fifth place newscast started to move with momentum with this new format.
And you assembled a lot of folks here. And here's another picture here.
Well,
too.
this one here is Philadelphia, and right here in the middle is Trudy Haynes, and she has the distinction of being one of the first African-American reporters that we hired and put on the 11 o'clock show. So we followed that same pattern in New York, and the woman that was at the head of that was
Which is the next picture that we have.
Melba Tolliver. And Melba Tolliver was a secretary in the newsroom. And there was a strike for AFTRA one year, and you know, when there's a strike, management has to fill the slots.
Isn't that fun?
So Melba was taken out to do Marlene Saunders' 5-minute network newscast. And she came in completely untrained, nice-looking, young, fresh woman with a great voice, and she just took that thing and just did fine. You know, Marlene Saunders, who's still around, I saw her maybe 2 or 3 years ago at a function, and she said, you know, it took me almost 40 years to forgive Melba Tolliver.
She was that good.
Yeah, for taking my slot. But anyhow.
So you take WABC, you change it, you do a lot of good there. That team, Grimsby and Butel, were awesome, and the folks that you put in there. When does Harry Reasoner come around? What happens?
Well, what happened is I went to, the success in New York City was so strong that the corporation kept coming to me and saying, look, you know, we got a problem in Los Angeles and one in San Francisco. Can you help us there? Can you help us here? And, you know, being a nice Italian boy from Pittsburgh, I'm helping for free. And then a good friend of mine said, you know, you got to be a little more demanding. And so I got to be a little more demanding, and they made me vice president of news for all the ABC stations.
Which is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I went around to all the stations, put Eyewitness News on all 5 of the ABC stations, exactly the way we did it in New York, and all 5 of those stations became the #1 stations in their market. One day,
hope you're getting paid more by now.
well, I'm getting, yeah, I'm doing okay, not great, but okay. And then I get a call from Harry Reasoner, who has left CBS 60 Minutes to come to ABC to be the anchor person. And he finds out what a lot of us knew, that the organization was pretty weak, pretty run down, and you know, he'd just given up a big career to come to ABC. So he called me up and said, I'd like you to come and be my executive producer. So I said, well, look, you know, I made Channel 7 in New York #1, in Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, and Detroit #1. I really deserve to be able to make ABC News #1. And I did talk to, I was talked to by the president of the company. He said, look, you know, you're only 30 years old. You got to go over there.
So you had some chutzpah.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm Italian. What do you expect? So I reluctantly went and became his executive producer, and it was a wonderful time. You know, we went to, one of the big things we did was to go to Camp David.
With President Ford, we've got a shot of that.
Harry Reasoner and I and a production team from ABC were the only people to ever get into Camp David. You know, they do all the interviews at the at the helicopter pad at Cape David. Nobody gets inside, but we were able to get inside and get to the presidential lodge and where Khrushchev had stayed, and so on. It was really a wonderful show. At any rate, the ambition to, you know, to run it all and get more and more kept growing and growing, and then there was a guy by the name of Roone Arledge who was doing big things in sports. He brought the Olympics. He was, you know, a superhero. So super that both CBS and NBC were after him, and ABC said, what do you want, Roone? And Roone said, I want to be the president of ABC News and the president of ABC Sports
Your
at the
nemesis,
same time.
right?
Well, no, he and I got along fine, but they gave him the job.
So then what happens?
Well, I decided that, you know, I could do Eyewitness News station by station and put it into the country on my own. So I left and became a consultant, hired Ken Bennett from Channel 8 here, which
Right,
is one
you
of the first.
consulted this television station.
Yeah, one of the first stations I consulted was this. Channel 3 had the Eyewitness News title, but
Sure.
then Channel 8 was given the way to, do
We
the
became
people's.
Action News.
Yeah, but it was, as I've said so many times, technology changes in television, but people stay the same. So focus on the people and focus on the community, and you're going to do fine. And that's what this station has done, and has done fine.
It's about the story.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line comes a book.
Well,
Did
again,
you put it all in there? Did
yeah,
you
I put everything in this book called Eyewitness Newsman. It's a, it's not Gone with the Wind, but it's the eyewitness news story, and it's there for historic purposes, and it's in a lot of colleges and so forth. It's not, as I say, it's not a bestseller,
But it's a primer, as you say,
Yeah, it's-
of telling stories
Exactly.
and serving your community. What do you think of television news today? It's 2015.
Well, this is a moment of transition for television. It's all going to the internet, and how that transition occurs is unknown.
It's the Wild West. I
It
will
is
tell
the
you.
Wild West. The content is still king. I believe that, I was instrumental in developing the News 12 cable operations in Connecticut.
I did not know that.
Yes, when Charles Dolan, the head of Cablevision, asked me to, join his team as an investor, because when the franchise was being sought after, every company in the United States wanted Connecticut. And so Scripps Howard and Cablevision and about 6 local yokels like me were part of the partnership.
I see.
And I had said to Dolan, I said, look, the only way I'm going to come and do that is if you make a budgetary commitment to cover local news in these communities. And he said, well, how much do you need? I said, well, we should have about $750,000.
You just came up with a figure?
No, I knew exactly what it was going to cost. And he said, okay. And so we go to the hearings, and most of the people in Cablevision, were pole climbers and, roughnecks. And Charles Dolan, who had the great vision, everybody else was going to. So we all had to appear before the State Public Utilities Commission. So I found time to coach all of these executives, and found this nice young lady who was in charge of human relations. And I said, we're going to make her be the lead horse. We're going to let her know about how we're going to do news and how we're going to treat people, and so I trained her, and we came up, and she said, Cablevision will establish the first local news operation in Connecticut with 10 local reporters in 10 different communities. And you could see the competition, Time Warner and all those guys going, oh my gosh, why didn't we think of that? And we got it. We got the franchise.
You also developed Teen Kids News.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, when I was at ABC and with the network, we used to have a lot of meetings about where's the next generation of news viewers coming from. And when I left, I thought, well, thinking about that, maybe we could create a program that will get teenagers out of their own world and into the real world by having them report. It's eyewitness news with teenagers, basically what it is. We just do people stories and stories about teens who've done things and accomplished things, and issues. We take kids to interview an admissions director of a college,
Very smart.
bullying, acne, health issues.
Stuff they can relate to.
Yeah,
in their own world.
Exactly.
And that is very successful.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. We've been on the air 12 years with that. We just got a People's Choice Awards to add to the Emmys.
What's your next project? Or are you kind of sitting back on your laurels?
No, you can't sit on your laurels in
I
this
like
industry.
that you just said that.
You cannot sit on your laurels. At the moment, it's taking up pretty much all of my time to do this show, and we do it. We have to clear the stations. We have to get the advertising. We got to get the kids, and I do have one of the people who work with me at ABC, Alan Weiss. has his own production company, and he's the production company that does this. He does a lot of the heavy lifting, and you know, I'm working with the stations and with the clients, and so it's taking up pretty much all of my time. But
what are the happiest memories you have of these decades of time in news?
well, I said just the other day in Las Vegas at the NAB, where I was lucky enough to get a nice award. I said, which was the Leadership Award from the for the Broadcasters Foundation.
Pretty nice.
I said, you know, I'm at an age where I'm counting my friends and my blessings. And my friends were here, and my blessings and your blessings and everybody who's in this business is the fact that we've been in this business for all these years. It's like going to play every day and not going to work.
And the gal that's been by your side for all of this is your lovely wife, who we're looking at now.
Yes.
So she's put up with a lot from you
She is.
over 50 years. And she's Sicilian.
That's right. No, really, I think this is the moment to, you know, to thank her and my family, because you can't do what we were able to do with this Eyewitness thing. It just consumes you in every element. You know, we didn't have tape in the early days, so I had to work all day, come home, watch the 11 o'clock news because you couldn't see it on tape. And, you know, so my kids suffered, my wife, you know, but worked out.
Well, Al Primo, I couldn't be more proud to know you, to meet you, and have you come on and tell us the history of television news. And I hope this conversation continues.
It will.
Thank you.
Thank you for being, I thank you for asking me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great.
Trivial pursuits when one listen. Who is this girl? Spend all night kissing, and if one was right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked, if I'm so wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store, but mine just to save time. Skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, that you need me.